Tuesday, May 7th. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report, coming to you live from Chicago until tomorrow. Tomorrow, heading back to DC. There's my chat. Excellent. I actually can see you guys. Susan bought a gift already. Thank you, Susan. That was early and wonderful. Sick ick. Sick ick. Got it. Lovely. That's great. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. Anyway, how are we doing, guys? Let me get TikTok roll. Yeah, I got my mic on. Okay, TikTok rolling. Boom. All right, TikTok. And we will get rolling. Hey, Linda. All right. Mirror. All right. Excellent. Excellent. Hello, all. So my last day in Chicago. Tomorrow I head to, exactly, bye-bye. Tomorrow I head back to D.C. for a few days, then Philly for the weekend for a birthday thing, then back in D.C. for a long time. So for months and months and months. Hey, Ash. So how's everybody doing? It is Tuesday. Actually, I just realized the Eurovision contest is on Saturday, so I'm definitely not coming home in time to watch it. So, oh well, sorry about that. I was thinking it was Sunday, and I will be home Sunday afternoon at some point. Thank you, John S., for the gift, and Jeremy. But I won't be home Saturday, though. So, excuse me. Hey, See It Kitchen in Seattle, how are you? Marie, Alan, Succeed, all thank you for the gifts. I appreciate that. So we won't be doing Eurovision at all. I thought it was Sunday, it's Saturday. Oh well. Anyway, you guys can watch on your own. Vlad was going to join us. Thank you, Big Hawk. Appreciate the gift, which is too bad, but oh well. What do you do? Like I said, my cousin's having a birthday party for his husband, a big birthday bash with all the relatives. I am good, Linda. Thank you for asking. What do we got? Jen. Thank you, Jen, for the gift. Oh, just a little tired, but it's okay. I had to give up coffee the last few days. I'm still feeling a bit off from my Bali trip, if you know what I mean, without going into the details. So I'm trying to avoid coffee now the last couple days, and it's just avoiding coffee. Not the most fun. Anyway, what do you do? Anyway, so good evening, Jens in Sweden. Thank you, Eva, also in Sweden. How you guys doing? I think we can get rolling. I don't like to drag this out too much because I know we get some people who drop in and just kind of check out the show. So this is my show I do Monday to Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern Time U.S. Thank you again, Ava, for the gift, and PC Noel as well. It's the show I do about the latest news from Ukraine. Typically, it's every night, Monday to Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern. Tomorrow night, Wednesday, and Friday night, I will not be doing the show because I'm traveling both days. So apologize for that. But otherwise, you will see me Thursday. So the next show after today is Thursday. We'll go through the news. Thank you, Derek. And a second half of the show is taking your guys' comments. So there is a chance for you to weigh in. Thank you, Derek. I will also I try to even now that I'm talking, I try to look at the comments to look for the gifts, to thank you guys and stuff like that. I will sometimes see comments that you post this part of the show. Thank you, Vicky, but not always. So be aware the second half of the show is when I really stop talking, so to speak, and focus on what you guys are asking, your comments, your questions, things like that. So there you go. All right, guys, let's get rolling then. It is day 803 of Vladimir Putin's special military operation. That was that was Danon with the festival bling. I always forget about that gift. I'm always like, what is that on my face? Thank you, Jen. Appreciate that. So today's 803 of, actually, I didn't update it. Today's 804. Hang on. 804. There we go. Of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation in Ukraine. Okay amount of news today. Not a huge amount, not a small amount. So I think we've got a good amount we can talk about. And then, like I said, second half of the show, we'll take your guys' questions. Let's dive right in. As always, I very much appreciate the gifts on TikTok and YouTube. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Canada Zen. The way we do this is, obviously, I take your guys' questions anyway, but YouTube Super Chat questions, thank you, Danon. Thank you, Richard. I will always answer those questions immediately as a thank you. And to the rest of you, I will do a shout out when I see your gifts on the screen. On TikTok, the little gifts are hard because there's a lot of them. But thank you, Kevin. For example, what Kevin just did, I'll do shout outs when I see those gifts. And I just appreciate the gifts, guys, because I do this for free and I do it full time. And your guys' gifts literally pay my bills. So please keep them coming. I appreciate it. All right. let's get rolling here. Let's get rolling. Thank you, Mikey. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Adventures, Kevin, Danon, Courtney, Jen. Make sure I'm not missing you guys here. Mikey Two Toes. It's so funny. Your mafia name. Thank you, Courtney. And Rocco. All right, guys. Let's get rolling. So, so Putin got sworn in today for his 5th term as president of Russia. As you know, his election was not exactly fair. He won with 87% of the vote. He had pretty much knocked. Well, I mean, his lead opposition was murdered. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Nancy, as well for the gifts. His lead opposition, which is Alexei Navalny, was killed in prison. Roundly believed by all the experts in the world that he was murdered by Putin. Thank you, Fred. Putin did try to kill Navalny before, back in 2020, with Novichok nerve agent, which is an old Soviet nerve agent, and looks like he succeeded this time around. So sadly, and in any case, Putin got sworn in again, gave kind of a typical speech. Thank you, Canada Zen. Russia's great, the West sucks, this kind of thing. I thought there was a really interesting analysis that Dominic Waghorn of Sky News did on Putin's 5th inaugural. He's been in power now for over 20 years. Actually, I think he's been president for 20 years, prime minister for 4 years. He served either longer than everyone except... Yes, he served longer than everyone except Stalin and Catherine the Great. And by the end of this term, Putin will have outserved Stalin. And only Catherine the Great will have served as a longer leader than him. And yes, Steven Seagal was there, cool. Steven Seagal and that loser German, Gerhard Schroeder, who's the former chancellor or whatever, who's kind of a big Russia sycophant. But anyway, Sky News. So there was a really interesting commentary from Sky News' Dominic Waghorn, who's one of their international affairs editor, sort of summarizing Putin's inauguration today. And I just thought it was really interesting. I am live on YouTube. Yep, I'm looking at the YouTubers right now. I'm there, Nick. It's there. It's there. So listen to this from Dominic Waghorn of Sky News' analysis. Thank you, Eli. Having rigged yet another election, subverted the Russian constitution, destroyed the free press, and either killed or locked up any opposition, Vladimir Putin today used all the trappings of Russian pomp and ceremony to try and cloak himself in a mantle of false legitimacy. Again, that is a paragraph that only a Brit can give. It's so good. Thank you, Kronos. Putin has taken a country that was emerging from communism and economic collapse towards reform and reintegration into the international community, and he turned it into a pariah state, threatening global security while he and his kleptocracy have stolen billions, he says. In his inaugural speech, Putin said Russia stands united. An estimated 900,000 Russians have voted with their feet and left the country since the invasion of Ukraine. Woo! It's anyway, it was quite a good statement. But so Putin got inaugurated today. Whatever. Ukraine. So Ukraine foiled an assassination plot against President Zelensky. Appears to have been a Russian plot. Big surprise there. There have been about 10 plots already against Zelensky since the war started to kill him. I don't know if this is number 11. I think it might be. There were 2 men arrested, but it actually went beyond that, the assassination plot. There were 2 men sort of coordinating on behalf of Russia. They had apparently been given drones, among other things, that they were supposed to pass along, and they were going to kidnap Zelensky and then kill him later, was the plot. They also were planning on killing the head of Ukrainian intelligence. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Joyce, for the gifts. Ukrainian intelligence, Ukrainian military intelligence, Budanov, who's the kind of, I was going to say charismatic, not exactly charismatic, but kind of a funny guy, who's military intelligence, and the plot was thwarted, thankfully. A little bit on that U.S. soldier. So another weird story that's out there. We talked about this yesterday. There's a little more news today. Thank you, Veer, for the gift. And thank you, World is my oyster, for the heart puff. And Joyce for the heart puff. And Jane for the heart. Sorry, I think I missed a few of you guys there. And VFR for the chill. The U.S. soldier. There's a U.S. soldier that was arrested in Russia. And very weird story. Thank you, Mustard. Good to see you. Very weird story. So it looks now like he was in love, and his love, left him and went to Russia, and he went to follow her. Mustard is on a roll with the gifts. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you, William, for the rose. So this U.S. soldier in South Korea meets a Russian girl. Now, again, insane that he would meet a Russian girl and think that this was okay. As a U.S. soldier, you should absolutely, positively, I mean, you meet a Russian girl and you run. Because it's called a honeypot or a honey trap. The idea is it's a sex trap. They're doing it to get you and use you later. Well, he meets this woman. They break up possibly several months ago. She goes back to Mother Russia. And this blithering idiot of a U.S. soldier decides to sneak into Russia to find the love of his life. What happens? They have a domestic dispute. She calls the police, says he stole money from her or God knows what. And they arrest him. They arrest the guy. So he's now in prison or in jail in Russia. The problem is he's a U.S. soldier, which means this is a great story for Russia because Putin's going to do what Putin always does, which is hold the guy in jail until we trade some super spy or something for him, because that's what they do. It's a really weird story. I'm trying to think. And the guy also is not exactly a sympathetic character. He said there's a number of TikTok videos they found of the girlfriend, or what she calls him her husband. So who knows what their relationship is. But there are some TikTok videos. And in the TikTok videos, he's talking about Ukraine and NATO's response, and says NATO was pretty aggressive in dealing with Russia. He says, I understand Russia's position, obviously. They want to defend their country, he says in the video. He then says that Donald Trump is better than Joe Biden. So he's a Trump voter, and he kind of sides with Putin. At least he is sympathetic to Putin on the invasion of Ukraine. There is not going to be a national outpouring of support well, there will be among Trumpers perhaps for this guy, but not very good. Ukraine, TikTok. So some TikTok news, kind of interesting. Ukraine is warning that the Russians are basically beating it on TikTok, which I thought was kind of interesting. This was an article in Bloomberg. It says Ukraine warned that the Kremlin. Oh, that's interesting. This article isn't written very well. Warned the Kremlin. Ukraine warned the Kremlin means Ukraine told the Kremlin something, right? That's not what they meant. They meant Ukraine warned that the Kremlin. I'm very picky about my English. I don't like it when either our trolls don't speak English well or when U.S. reporters don't speak English well. Anyway, Ukraine warned that the Kremlin is expanding its use of TikTok to question the legitimacy of Zelensky's presidency and undermine the nation's morale as Russia presses its advantage in cyberspace as well as on the battlefield. Russia's legions of influencers and bots are behind a series of viral TikTok videos that zero in on May 20th, the date that Zelensky's first term would have ended if the country's election cycle hadn't been disrupted because of martial law. According to a senior Ukrainian official, thank you, Elizabeth, focused on Russia's wartime dissemination of false information. So, yeah, basically, and by the way, this is a talking point that we've heard. I mean, we've all heard this anyway. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's a common talking point from the Russian trolls. And they try to pretend they're Americans. Why isn't he leaving office? He's not leaving office because you invaded and you're trying to wipe out his entire country. But why isn't he having an election? Because the Ukrainian constitution says that if they're at war, if they're in martial law and they're at war, they don't hold an election in the middle of an existential war trying to wipe out the country. Very simple answer. But the trolls, being trolls, are trying to do this whole. Again, my favorite is Ukraine's not really a democracy, they're saying. And Russia is. Ukraine's a much bigger democracy, a much better democracy than Russia is. That's for sure. But whatever. Any case, let's move on. Pro-Russian Chechen forces. So this was interesting. So the Russians, now that Wagner Group is kind of, defunct in many ways. I mean, they're using it in Africa, but it's become something else, really. The Wagner Group is the mercenary group that the Russians had that was quite effective. Very brutal, but quite effective. And then Putin killed the leader of the Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, because Prigozhin tried to overthrow Putin in a coup. And Putin's not the kind of guy you overthrow in a coup and basically fail. Prigozhin kind of quit and believed Putin's promises that Putin wasn't going to kill him, and Putin turned around 2 months later and blew up his plane. So big surprise there. In any case, The Russians are now relying on Chechens again. It says this was an article, not an article, but this is from the British Ministry of Defence's Twitter feed, saying that pro-Russian Chechen forces are bearing the brunt of the front lines in Ukraine and training Russian troops behind the scenes. Around 9,000 personnel are currently serving within the pro-Russian Chechen forces in Ukraine. The Danish Foreign Ministry announced that a new 250 million kroner or $33 million humanitarian aid package for Ukraine is announced. Romania says that it is open to discussing the possibility of sending a Patriot missile system to Ukraine. This is good. Biden, I believe, was pressuring the Romanian Prime Minister. Thank you, Vicky. Appreciate the gift. And it's not a done deal, but he had just met with President Biden and the Prime Minister, Klaus. Oh, he's president. Oh, no, he's Prime Minister, I think. He's got to be Prime Minister. Klaus Ioannis says that he is going to take it up with the Supreme Defense Council and talk about whether they can get Ukraine one of these defense batteries for the Patriot missiles, which would help a lot to basically take down the incoming missiles and everything else coming from Russia. Italy... Ants. We've got ants in this house. Italy is, let me see what we got. Oh, I know. Okay, so Italy. So Italy jumped in on this whole controversy about Ukraine using Western weapons to fight in Russia, right? There's been a whole little, not a whole controversy, but the Brits have said all along that the Ukrainians can use British weapons to attack Russia itself, not just Russian troops in Ukraine, but if there's like a Russian missile battery or something within Russia or Russian storage facility for the military, the Ukrainians can attack it using a British weapon. The Americans have said no up until recently, and then our Secretary of Defense made this comment that sounded like it was okay now. It's a little weird. I mean, so the Americans are kind of talking out of both sides of their mouth. Well, the Italians weighed in and said, no, our weapons are only to be used within Ukraine's borders itself. So the Italians got a little bit of cold feet on that front. Reuters reports, this was kind of good. So the Ukrainians did an investigation of the North Korean missiles that the Russians are using in violation of UN sanctions. You're not allowed to buy or sell weapons to North Korea. The Russians are doing it in violation of the sanctions. And the Ukrainians did an investigation of the North Korean missiles, and they found that half of the missiles fired by Russia blow up in midair. Half of the missiles that they're getting from North Korea, I should say, which is good news, obviously. A little bit more on this. About half of the North Korean missiles lost their program trajectories and exploded in the air. In such case, the debris was not recovered, obviously. Russia's violating UN sanctions by buying weapons from North Korea. And in addition to providing North Korea with an opportunity to test its missiles, Russia has taken steps that will make it harder for the United Nations to monitor sanctions imposed on North Korea. There is a sanctions review committee that's been around, I think, 15 years now. And it has to be renewed possibly every year by the United Nations. And the Russians, in order to help the North Koreans and just be jerks, have refused this year to renew the committee. So the committee the committee to basically monitor sanctions on North Korea is now no longer working and disbanded because the Russians got rid of it, because they basically vetoed it. They wouldn't renew it. There's a part of me that I really don't understand. I say this before where I say the Russians aren't crazy, and they're not crazy. So, don't think that they act irrationally. But there's something weird with them with regards to very childish behavior I think they do as a government. And this is an example of it. Not childish. It's reckless. Like, why would Russia want... Well, I know why Russia, actually. Why would Russia want North Korea to better arm itself? Because North Korea said that was part of the bargain for it selling weapons to Russia because Russia's desperate in Ukraine. Right? I think that's exactly what's going on. North Koreans said, get rid of the sanctions committee, the sanctions monitor, and we'll sell you the weapons. And the Russians said, okay. So there you go. And finally, actually the news went fast. I had 4 pages of news, but it went quickly tonight. Ukraine's, what do you call it? Ukraine's entry. That's the word I'm looking for. Entry into the Eurovision Song Contest, which is a big song competition that happens every year in Europe, is happening this weekend. And Ukraine's entry, the Aliona, or the woman Aliona and Jerry Heil, have qualified for the Eurovision finals in Sweden's city of Malmo today. So that's very good. The finals are going to be Saturday. So make sure you check that out. I'm going to be, as I said, in Philadelphia, so I'm not going to be able to join you. Normally we do a whole hangout. It's kind of fun. The last 2 years we've been watching Eurovision live for all 4 or 5 hours of it on the finals day. It's been quite fun. But alas, this year it ain't happening because I'm going to be in Philly. So sorry about that, guys. In any case, that's it for the news. Just another quick pitch to you. I've got, remember, a number of auctions going. We do auctions to benefit Ukraine. Half the money from the auctions goes to Ukraine. So half the money we make goes to Ukraine. Half the money goes to support my work because I do this for free full time, which is why I'm always hitting you guys up for gifts. So please do keep the gifts coming. But we've got the auctions over on Discord. You can find our Discord community. You guys on YouTube can find it at aravosis.com. Just scroll and you'll see Discord. You guys on TikTok can go to my profile on TikTok, look at the link, the Linktree link, click it, and first or second link, I think, is Discord. Click that, go over there, and on the left-hand side, thank you, Adventures, and thank you, Nancy, for the gifts. On the left-hand side, you'll see the auctions. I've got a lot of cool stuff. One thing from Bali that I got, a really cool mask I've shown you guys before that I think is kind of neat, because the Balinese, there's a whole tradition of I'd say sort of mysticism, but mysticism probably isn't the right word. But there's a whole tradition of these masks and what they represent, which is very interesting. But there's also some really cool woven Ukrainian fabrics from the 1950s and 60s, table fabrics. I've got cool Ukrainian military shirt, actually, that was sold by the Ukrainian military to make money for the military to raise funds that says, I believe in the armed forces of Ukraine, but it says it in Ukrainian. It's very cool. And some Ukrainian candy too, that we bought to basically auction off. And and finally, and the Shahid drone part too. The drone, this is stuff I like. It's funny. I think we're on different sides here. Thank you, Frank. A number of you like this stuff, but I think I like it more than you do. I've got a piece. Actually, this is the last piece I've got of. I think it's the last piece I've got, I'm pretty sure, of a Russian Shahid drone. It's the drones that the Iranians have been selling to the Russians to attack Ukraine. And some folks in Ukraine were able to get a piece of it, and I am auctioning that piece off. So thank you, Sean. Thank you, Bradley, for the gifts. And like I said, I think this is really cool. I saw that I think Mustard and Callum are both bidding on it, which is sort of typical. Mustard and Callum have the same taste I have in this stuff. So they're sort of the guarantee when it comes to auctions. But anyway, do go check out the auctions. We've got 8 or 9 things. It's pretty cool. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate that. I try to know things about stuff. So thank you. I know we've got to get me a mugga hat, guys. Get me a mugga hat, or maybe I'll buy one and we can auction it off or something. That'd be pretty fun. Yep, I can sign it or something if folks want. No news on the Swedish Gripens. Thanks, Linda. Yep, let's do. We can do our Q&A now because we're done with the news. No, this is the part of the show where we hang out, take your guys' questions, comments, your thoughts on what's going on. Swedish Gripens, no news on that. I mean, I didn't, unless there was something in the last day or so. But Sweden was supposedly considering, but they've been considering for months and months and months and months and months. Sweden supposedly considering giving some of its fighter jets, the Gripens, to Ukraine, but they've been considering for a very long time. So I don't think anything's happening. Ash is asking, did we get any hail? We did not get hail. Not out here. We don't say where here is, but in the Chicago suburbs. I did not watch Eurovision today. I kind of forgot that I didn't realize we could watch Eurovision now. I'm used to watching the finals that day, but I never realized the semifinals. I would have watched the semifinals today had I remembered or had I known that. Joe Marquis says, I saw a video of a Russian helicopter shooting at a Ukrainian boat drone this morning. Oh, that's interesting. Although we don't quite know when. I mean, do you know when that was? What is Eurovision? I am the worst person to tell you because, I've known about this for 20 years, but I never really watched it until now. You guys got me watching it. It is an international song contest, but popular music. I'd say pop, but it's not just pop, but it's kind of pop music in Europe. And it happens every year. And it's countries across Europe, including Israel. And I think, didn't we say Australia? And I'm going to guess New Zealand too. Are there other countries, or is that it in terms of branching outside of Europe? Is it only Australia, New Zealand, and Israel? Or are there other countries outside of, the former Soviet are there, because I know Kazakhstan, which is not Europe, I would say, is included. So you do get some of the former Soviet as well. They're there as well, even though some of them I think are debatably Europe. Turkey's Europe, right? Georgia's an interesting question. Do you guys think Georgia's Europe? I'm kind of curious about that. Americans too, but international crowd. Is the country of Georgia Europe to you guys? Now I'm curious about the Europeans actually. Let me ask. This is a question for the Europeans. Because the Americans, I'm curious, but I'm more curious about the Europeans since they're European. Whether you see Georgia as being European. And not a matter of looking it up. This is a matter of how Europeans perceive it. Yeah, see, that's my question, how the Europeans perceive it. No, I know the Georgians are fighting to be European, but I'm curious as to how the Europeans perceive it. Kind of a mixed bag. Mixed bag. I mean, Israel's certainly not Europe, of course not. Interesting mixed bag there. Yeah. I know the Georgians are fighting to be Europe, absolutely. But just curious. Okay. I'd say 50-50 I'm getting from the Europeans here. Yeah, just curious, like I said. Anyway, we like the Georgians anyway. They're fighting a sort of oppressive government that is pro-Russian and trying to clamp down on democracy there. So we very much like the Georgians and support them. Now that's it. I mean, Jens raises an interesting point. He goes, I think Georgia is European a bit like Ukraine. That's an interesting way of putting it, I think. Actually, honestly, I mean, it's kind of like Russia. I mean, Western Russia, right? I mean, I've always said, is Western Russia Europe? You know what I mean? I would almost say Western Russia isn't Europe, but it's European, right? Meaning it's Europe-ish to me. But the Russians are not Europeans. Then again, you get to Eastern Europe and things do get more interesting anyway. I mean, the Turks, right? Is Turkey Europe? I mean, it is obviously, but is it, right? You start to get east and things get a little more gray, I think, and certainly more with Georgia and then Kazakhstan. Forget it. I mean, I would not consider Kazakhstan Europe, but then again, you're the ones who decide. It's your continent. Anyway. All right, guys, just curious, just kind of always curious what you guys think on this stuff, especially, like I said, especially the Europeans. Capital of Turkey is Asia, or Asia Minor, I guess, right, is what it's called. Anyway, all right, guys, so yeah, we've got time. Hang out, take your questions, comment. This is the part where I'm done going through the news, so I can actually focus on what you guys are writing in the comments, and we can talk about it. So. Right away. What else? Thank you, Vicky, for the gift. Roma says one of the geographical centers of Europe is in Ukraine. I mean, the European. I will say too, the Ukrainians certainly. Well, okay, I've not been to Ukraine, but obviously I've seen a lot of Ukraine in the last couple of years. They seem culturally European to me. They're Slavic, but they're Slavic European, just like any of the other Eastern European countries, very, very much so. I did not know that, Bold Ruler. I'm going to guess some of the Brits may not love you bringing that up, but what the hell? What are we saying? Ukrainians are descended from Scandinavia. There is that connection, yes. Yes, I am not the expert on that, but I know the Kiev Rus or whatever, at least there's a connection there with the Scandinavians, which is really kind of interesting when you think about it. What a wild connection from Scandinavia to Ukraine. But it kind of makes sense, though, because if you look at where they are on the map, they're not that far, right? You kind of go across Belarus or you go across Poland. You go across Poland and then you're on the water. And then you've got, Sweden. But it's just... I don't think of Ukraine as being close to Scandinavia, but, it is. What else we got? Oh. Excuse me. I told you I did not have my coffee today, so. Kiev is made by Vikings on their way to Constantinople. That's at least what I saw in my TV shows I watch. But of course, I watch like the Viking shows on Netflix and stuff, so I never quite know whether I'm getting the full story, you know. But I remember trying to go to Constantinople was like the big quest of them because they were Christians and all of that. Paul has a question. Okay, what? Oh, there's Paul. Let me see. There's Paul. I asked about the dragon bear theory yesterday. You did, and I didn't know what it was, but I know you were occupied, so I ask again, do you think it's credible? What is the theory? The theory that it's Cold War 2.0 with Russia and China versus the U.S. and the West. Yeah, ish. I'd have to know more about the theory, but clearly it's Cold War 2.0 with Russia. That's a guarantee. China, I think, is trying to kind of, doing well, Hazel, thank you. China, I think, is still kind of trying to play not both sides. China's trying to play two sides, the middle and Russia. So they're trying to play, oh, we're in the middle, and oh, we're totally in Russia's pocket. And they're playing both sides. The Russians are just the Soviet Union, and they're back to their old games again, sadly. Thank you, GMA, for the heart puff, and thank you, World is my oyster, as well, for the gift, and GMA again for another gift. Right? That, I think, is pretty straightforward. I'm not convinced that it's Russia and China. I think China kind of historically in modern history, I think kind of goes back and forth with these alliances. Like they were kind of friendly with America in the 70s, possibly against Russia. And now they're friendly with Russia again against America. But China is so focused on economics that, thank you, Martin, for the gift. China's so focused on economics that I think they realize it's probably not good for them to be totally... I mean, Russia's the bad boy, right? Russia wants... I don't know if Russia wants war, but Russia wants chaos to a degree, right, in the international scene. China does not want that. China needs its economy. It needs to protect its economy. And I would say that typically economies do better when you don't have chaos, right? When you've got kind of, set rules and uniformity and things not blowing up figuratively or literally. So that I think, again, China's in a weird position where they're working with Russia to counter the U.S., and it's a smart liaison to some degree, or a smart relationship to some degree. But as we just saw with China going to Europe this week, or with Xi going to France, Serbia, and I think Hungary this week, he's also trying to play the sucking up to Europe economically and all that kind of game. So I don't know, but I'm not convinced yet. Thank you, Nicholas. And thank you, Liv. I'm not convinced yet that it's a China-Russia Cold War against us. I don't think that's where we are. I also think, for example, our relations with China aren't that bad. Not like that. Not like they are with Russia. Russia is a Cold War again. And now we've got, okay, I think my nephew's going to probably be here because I can hear a car, which means in about 2 seconds I'm going to have to tell somebody walking in the door where he goes, "Hey, Uncle John," broadcasting live around the world. So, exactly. Businesses like predictability so they can make investments, says Solak. Yeah, exactly. And I think China's the same way, Discord today, let's see. I'm just not feeling very well. Like I said, I've been feeling kind of since my trip, and also I'm almost getting a sore throat right now too. So I'm not convinced. I mean, I do want to do Discord, but since I was sort of the sore throat thing today too, I kind of feel like I want to end the show and just kind of chill. Is China going to seize the land Russia took from them? Oh, that's interesting. David's asking if China is going to seize the land that Russia took from them years ago. Not anytime soon. If Russia were to fall apart, they would. Yeah, they are going to the front door. Oh, okay. Not my nephew, but it looks like my niece. As long as they stay in the other room, we're good. And I'm not convinced they will, but hopefully they do. Anyway. What else we got, guys? And we in Sweden think that it could be us who were attacked by Russia? Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, the good thing is you guys are NATO members. Now, again, with Donald Trump, Matthias, you never know. You never know if he's going to come to your defense. But generally speaking, it's a good thing that you guys are members of NATO. Because, yeah, it pisses off the Russians and they like to kind of do their nasty stuff. Thank you. Who's that, Danan? Thank you for the bling. But you're going to have a lot of countries like the Brits who are going to come to defend you. So, yeah, I think the Russians, I think, are going to do to Sweden exactly what they're doing to the Baltic countries and everything else. They're gonna screw around with you. They're playing around with the GPS and all that stuff. Okay. This is going to be exactly loud family in the other room. But I don't see them invading. Hopefully, yeah. A cup of tea with honey isn't a bad idea. Thanks, Mama. That's a good idea, actually, Mama. Well, it's a good. I mean, it's an interesting question. Why do a lot of people like to use violence to fix their issues? That is a very big question. I mean, it's a very difficult question to answer, because it depends. Like I am fine with using violence to solve problems, but I don't think you should always use violence to solve problems, and I don't think you should jump to using violence to solve problems, right? So I think it's complicated in that regard. You know what I mean? Part of the problem, and this depends on your question. Part of it depends on if you're somebody who thinks violence is never the answer, meaning countries should never go to war, then you would have one take. I am somebody who thinks sometimes wars are necessary, but I think they should be justified. We shouldn't be lied to about them. When we get into the war, and this is something I've said about Biden, if we're going to get into a war, we should get into it to win. And I don't think we're in Ukraine to win. I don't think at all. Like I said, we've got everyone in the other room, but there's nothing I can do. If I go and tell them to be quiet, they'll get annoyed. So I do think there are rules about getting involved in wars, such as if you're going to get in, you better win. You better plan to win. But I'm not against the violence per se, but I think it's probably a fair point that sometimes there's a little bit too prone to use violence, Yes, the Greek household, exactly. Did I rock the jacket? The jacket is this weekend. I'm bringing it to Philadelphia with me. So, yep. Well, that's true too. Yeah, I mean, Malavri says violence is not to fix their issues, but to get what they want and what's not theirs. That's certainly the case in Russia. I mean, I'm not even going to get into the Middle East stuff because everyone's on different sides of that issue. And I've said before, the Middle East issue had no choice but to invade. Russia decided to invade because Russia wants Ukraine, period. They want to wipe out the country and absorb it as part of Russia, which they've already started to do. Is Russia going to nuke Europe? Nope, because Europe is going to nuke Russia if they do that. And there's no way that Russia wants that to happen, Mohammed. This is a point sort of I'd made before, but I don't want to be definitive. Let me say very unlikely is maybe a better way of putting it. Because the problem is that all of the European countries surrounding Russia are NATO members. I mean, pretty much, Austria and Sweden. I mean, Austria and Switzerland and a few others, right? Aren't, but they're NATO members. If Russia were to nuke them, then France, Britain, and America are going to nuke Russia back. So that's Russia knows that. And Russia doesn't want a nuclear war because they'd lose a nuclear war. We'd all lose a nuclear war, but Russia would lose it too, right? Right? I mean, a nuclear war means everybody dies. And the Russians, they're not, this is why I said at the beginning, the Russians aren't stupid and they're not crazy. The Russian government knows they like to threaten nuclear war, but that's to freak us out. That's a psychological game. Well, and they did it again this week. The Russians are always threatening nuclear war because they kind of know that a lot of our people are wimps. I think a lot of our leaders are wimps. They go, oh my God, Russia's threatening nuclear war. I'm so scared. Maybe we should be nice to them. They're trying to, force us to basically pull ourselves in, Yeah, actually, don't shut that all the way because she tries to get out and then she gets pissed. So thank you. My nephew was just walking through, but my dog gets upset when she goes to the door and tries to go through. I know, Andy. Who knows? Yeah, I can see they're like, yeah, Uncle John's talking to his computer for another hour. We don't know why. Thank you, Celta. And again, I think with nuclear weapons, you don't want to be like absolute and say, oh, everything's fine, right? It's very dangerous for Russia to be threatening nukes, but there is no logical reason Russia would use nukes unless it thought, first of all, that we weren't going to use them back, right? If Russia thought it could get away with using nukes, then who knows, right? If they decide in their calculus that it's worth using it, blah, blah, blah. But we have to make it so that it's not worth it for Russia to use them. And that means making clear to them what will happen if they do use them, right? What do you mean, Gunther? I'm not sure what ham means. Is that one of your kids' internet abbreviations? Gunther was asking, do you think Biden will change his tune in a second term and go HAM on Russia? I'm not sure what you mean. What does that mean? Does that mean like boom on Russia? I think Biden's worried. I think Biden's a little bit afraid of Putin. He's not going to change. He's not going to change. That's who he is, and it's not just Putin. My think is that this is who Biden is on. This is who Biden is on foreign affairs. He's got a little bit of a fear factor going or something. Hard as an MFer. No, not at all, because that's not who he is. Biden would have done it now if that's who he was. Bradley knows who. Everybody apparently knows this abbreviation except me. HAM, I'd never seen that before. That's very funny. Why does Ukraine keep asking for help? Well, because the Russians are threatening on taking their country away from them. I mean, and lately they're not doing as well because the U.S. cut weapons for 6 months, and it gave the Russians a big advantage. And the Russians have been taking more land from the Ukrainians. So, no, the Russians are still there. I mean, Russia's got a lot of problems. They've lost a lot of troops. They've lost a lot of weapons, but they're still a big country. And they're still threatening Ukraine. And in the end, they could still take a big chunk of Ukraine. More of it. They've got 18%. They could take even more. So they definitely need our help. I hope so, Dawn. Dawn says, I think once Biden wins the election, he'll go all out. I hope so, but my fear with Biden is that it is his approach to international affairs. That's my fear. I think, and I mean, I know it kind of simplifies it to say he's afraid of Putin, but Biden is somebody who kind of, I think he's very, maybe transactional is the word. I'm not sure what I'm looking for, but where, he kind of wants everybody to get together and reach it. We can always reach a deal. We can reach a deal. Let's reach a deal. Let's not piss each other off. Let's not anger the Republicans. I'm not going to criticize Republicans publicly, Biden would say, right? Because then maybe they won't reach a deal with me later on. And I'm not going to attack Putin because I don't want to put too. Remember the off-ramp? Biden, I think himself said about giving Putin an off-ramp. The French said it, but I think Biden said it. He's got this whole kind of concept of we can work things out. And working things out also means not rocking the boat. It's kind of China on the economy to some degree. And there's a little bit of a fear of Russia because Russia doesn't approach things that way. He's a little bit afraid of them. He's very diplomatic. I think that's a good way of putting it, Nathan. But in a bad way. Because typically we think diplomatic is good. Like, oh, very diplomatic, right? But I think he's diplomatic in sort of the stereotype of the State Department. The State Department is our foreign ministry in the States. And the stereotype, not the reality, I think, but the stereotype is that it's an agency that always wants peace at all costs and is always willing to acquiesce and never wants to go to war, right? And they'll do anything to make things happy, sometimes to the point of doing things to help the other, to a fault, exactly, Rocket, and almost like to the point of almost helping the other countries. We call it going native here. And I think there's a little bit of that in Biden. He's got a little bit of that diplomacy thing where he always thinks a deal can be worked out. Do I think Russia would ever try to reclaim Alaska? No, because it'd be World War III, and they'd lose. I mean, we might lose too, but they'd lose. Yeah, no. Again, that kind of stuff they can't touch. That's what I mean. And the Russians talk about it because they're trying to get inside your head. They're trying to make people go, oh my God, are the Russians crazy? Would they go after Alaska? Oh my God, right? And they're trying to just scare Western leaders and Western public into thinking maybe we should be nicer. It's World War II all over again, guys, to some degree, right? Oh, you're so scary. Maybe if we're just nice to you and placate you and we give you stuff and don't stand up to you too much, maybe you'll just be satisfied and go away, right? We're going to satisfy you and therefore you will be less angry and less scared and less belligerent because we give you stuff. We'll give you land. We won't threaten you, right? And you'll become nice actors on the world stage, Germany, World War II, right? And I think some people look at Russia that way too. Thank you, Shebug, for the hat and mustache. Biden's super foreign policy focus. I mean, that's his expertise, Trace Terry, what did you got here? Which is more effective, spending 2% of GDP or just bribe Trump for a fraction of that to pronounce America as an ally? Okay, I'm not... Give me more there. What do you mean? You're saying Ukraine spend it, or I know you're kind of joking, but half joking. Who are you talking about spending the money or bribing Trump? I do think Trump is out for Trump. You know, you make Trump a deal that involves this. Thank you, Kat. And he's going to be your man if he can get away with it. I mean, absolutely, positively. You know. So yeah, whether it's bribing him, I don't know whether legal. Then again, he probably legally would get away with it, or he'd pardon himself. Will the French send troops if it gets worse for Ukraine? Maybe. The French president has talked about it twice. The other NATO countries, several of them like the U.S. got freaked out. Germany got freaked out by France saying it. The Czech government said, hey, not a terrible idea. The Polish government said, hey, not a terrible idea. What the French president Macron said was that if the Russians were to basically like cross a red line, as he called it, of a new big offensive that threatened Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital, and maybe Odessa in the south. When I say threatened, I mean threatened to overrun it and take it, right? So take the capital, take Odessa in the south. That if the Ukrainians asked for it, the French would consider sending troops. And a lot of the NATO allies all went, eh. But I think at the very least, it is a very good idea for France to put it out there because it freaks the Russians out. And freaking the Russians out is not a goal in and of itself. It is good to freak the Russians out because the Russians will now have to figure out in their calculus of what they do in this war. They're now going to have to say, okay, if we make a big push at Kyiv to actually take the capital, are the French going to put troops in? And if the French put troops in, are we going to go to war with the French? And if we go to war with the French, does that bring in the Americans and the rest of Europe? Right? That makes it much costlier and confusing for the Russians if they decide to go after Kyiv, for example, or Odessa in the south. That's what you want. You want it to be more confusing, more gray, more risky for the Russians to act. I know. I think it's great what France suggested. You know, Officer Trucker, I'm doing my show, right? And now my dog is going to say hi to the nephew. Now we have the nephew brigade. But what was that? Oh, the nuke. Oh yeah, anything about Russia preparing nuclear weapons, and if so, do you believe it's true? They've made stupid comments. I mean, the Russians have said things like, oh, they're going to, I forget what they're going to do. They're going to practice tactical nuclear weapon usage or some bull like this, which are little nuclear weapons basically that you'd use like on the battlefield, not the big ones you'd use to blow up a city, right? And it's all BS, guys. I mean, maybe they are going to practice. I think this gets us back to the Cold War. We are back in a Cold War with Russia, absolutely. This is the Cold War again. The Russians are threatening us. The Russians are going to build up their nukes and they're going to threaten us again. Yeah. So that's all back. Thank you, Joker. And the only way to sort of fight back is to fight back and to build ourselves up, sadly. Thank you, Bradley. Which means, unfortunately, spending more money on weapons and everything else because of the Russians. But you know, it's to me it's BS. Though it still is. Hey, Jens, in Kuala Lumpur, interesting. I'd like to go to Kyiv this year. I don't know. There's a chance. I know Dutch Cossack is going in July again, and has asked me if I wanted to go with, and I would like to go with. I'm sort of trying to decide. There's a chance. I'd like to go. I just don't. There's a part of me that isn't sure if it's entirely safe, but, but maybe. Oh, Terry, you answered? Okay. Let me see. Oh, God, I hate this. Because it's people answer, but then it's like all over the place here where the answer is. Oh, here it is. No, which is more effective? Just bribe. Actually, you've got to answer with my name because it's the only way I can see it, Terry. I don't see your answer. Oh, European countries in NATO. Okay, I see. Well, same thing. If they bribe Trump, sure. Yeah. If they were to pay off Trump, and that might be cheaper than 2% of GDP. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Again, it's not legal, but would it work? Yes, I think it would. What would happen if Belarus entered the war? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure. Well, I mean, there's an issue with the border by Ukraine, except the Ukrainians have built up the border pretty significantly, defenses. Belarus is up here. Belarus, nasty dictatorship, bordering Russia, bordering Poland. Lukashenko's the dictator. He's been there like, I don't even know, 25, 30 years now or something. Nasty dictatorship. The Ukrainians have been worried about the Belarusians have been helping the Russians, but not directly. They haven't invaded Ukraine themselves, but they've been helping the Russians. The Ukrainians were worried about the Belarusians possibly coming across the border here. The Ukrainians, apparently this is marshland, or some of it is, which makes it very difficult to invade. Also, the Ukrainians have put a lot of defenses along here as well to stop the Belarusians from doing that. So I don't know whether they would invade. I think if Belarus were to invade, you'd run the risk of Poland jumping in. Also, I'm not convinced the Belarusians have much of an army, but nonetheless, it'd be a pain and a distraction if the Ukrainians had to worry about it on the border there, That's what I had heard before, Hardy. Yeah, Hardy said Belarus has to walk through a swamp to get to Ukraine. That's what I'd always read, was those are sort of swamplands there on the border, which makes it much more difficult to get across. And the Ukrainians have built up a lot of defenses there as well. NATO should say that if a tactical or any nuclear weapon is used in an offensive way, it's Article 5. Well, so what Martin's saying is that NATO should tell the Russians, if you use a nuke in any way, shape, or form inside Ukraine, it's war. We're going to war. One, you could hear that, Christian. You could hear Sasha. I think that's... we don't know that hasn't been said. I mean, they wouldn't necessarily say that publicly, because if you say it publicly, then you're almost daring the Russians to do it and saving face and all that weird stuff. You would have to tell the Russians privately. And you'd have to tell them privately and say, like, right, you use nukes, and here's what's going to happen. And maybe we did. I mean, one hopes we did, because I think even Biden, who I have some issues with on the Ukraine stuff, Biden gets that we cannot have Russia use nukes in Ukraine. Because guess what happens next? If Russia uses small nukes, even talking about it sounds kind of funny, like little nukes are okay. Russia uses little nukes in Ukraine, and we let them. Does that mean Israel gets to use little... Israel has nuclear weapons, by the way. Does that mean Israel gets to use little nukes in Gaza? Does that mean India and Pakistan get to use little nukes against each other? Right? Does North Korea get to use little nukes against South Korea? I mean, are we now legitimizing the use of nuclear weapons? I mean, that's the danger of Putin using them. And I think Biden gets that, even though Biden's afraid of a conflict with Russia. But I think he gets that. Yeah, and Hardy, absolutely. Belarus does not have control of Russian nuclear weapons. No way. No way. They've kind of made noise like they did at one point, and they don't. There's no way in hell the Russians would risk their nukes by letting the Belarusians just use them if they wanted to, because then Russia would end up going to war. Yeah. Andre, I fear that every country will want to make their nukes at this point anyway. But correct. One of the problems is if Russia gets away with using nukes, it's a greater incentive for other countries to then make their own nuclear weapons, because, hey, Russia got away with it. We can use these things. I worry that this war already is sending a strong message about nuclear weapons use. Not use, but nuclear weapon production, because Ukraine gave us its nukes. Soviet Union broke apart 1991. Ukraine inherits a large portion of Russia's, not Russia, but the Soviet Union's nuclear weapons. They were part of the Soviet Union. And Ukraine gives them up in exchange for a promise of peace from Russia, guaranteed by the U.S. and Britain. And France, I think, was involved too. Well, we didn't really guarantee it, and the Russians obviously broke the promise. Thank you, GMA. Thank you, Liv, for the gifts. Please keep the gifts coming, guys. Maybe consider some of the gifts, the monthly membership gifts that we do for the other members would be nice too, if you can. Sorry, I hate that when I go on a tangent too. I go on a little tangent and then I forget. Thank you, Vicky. Liv and GMA and running and Vicky. What were we talking about, guys? I hate that. We were talking about something with nukes, was it not? What was my train of thought? It was an interesting question. Somebody help me get it back. Thank you, Red Watch, for the tiny tiny. Red lines for NATO. Wasn't Belarus using them, though? It wasn't because it wasn't. Getting nukes. Getting nukes. Yeah. It was about other countries having an incentive to get nuclear weapons. So Ukraine gives up its nukes, and what happens? Russia invades multiple times. And so not only does Russia have the nerve to invade because Ukraine no longer has nukes, right? If Ukraine had nukes, Russia might be a little more worried about invading. But the U.S. and NATO pulled a lot of punches in not defending Ukraine as much as we would normally or could or should because we were afraid of Russia's nuclear weapons, right? So now you're saying, okay, A, if I have nuclear weapons, countries like Russia won't push me around. B, if I give up my nuclear weapons, then it's an invitation for them to push me around. And C, if I have nuclear weapons, I can push other countries around like Russia's doing and get away with it. I mean, Russia's faced a lot of penalties in terms of sanctions and other things, of course. But there's a part of it that they're getting away with as well. We're not standing up to Russia like we would normally because we're afraid of their nukes, right? So that's the problem is, thank you, Mikey, there's a definite lesson being sort of given here to the rest of the world that having nukes is maybe a good idea. You know, it's very dangerous, even if Russia doesn't use the nukes. We're already at the point where if Putin ends up getting anything out of this war, it says that nukes might have been worth it. Baby nukes. Exactly. I don't think so. No. Quasi's asking, do I think we'll see volunteer foreign pilots flying F-16s? I don't think so. I don't think the U.S. would want that. And the U.S. will get the final say since they're U.S. weapons. I mean, we sold them to other European countries, but they're still U.S. weapons. It's just my guess, but I think the U.S. would go, you know? Although it might be good because there might be some really good, like some retired American pilots who'd be really good at it, right? Thank you, Gamma, for the hearts. Chris is asking over on YouTube, did you see TikTok is going to go after the U.S. for First Amendment rights violations? Yes. I mean, we knew TikTok was going to basically sue the U.S. government over the legislation that is trying to force it to divest, to sell, to be sold by ByteDance, the Chinese company. And we knew they were going to make a First Amendment argument, which is fascinating for a Chinese company to basically make a First Amendment argument. Really fascinating. So yeah, but nonetheless, it's embarrassing for them, but they're gonna do it anyway. So I did see that, Linda. I did see something about that Putin added Zelensky to some arrest list, I didn't care. It's stupid, but yes, he added Zelensky to some international arrest warrant list or God knows what. The Russians want to arrest Zelensky for war crimes or something. It's like, go away. I saw it, but it's just Russia being, again, when I say Russia sort of acting childish, it's Russia acting childish, because it's just so stupid. I sometimes I wonder about them sometimes, like what's even the goal in doing that, Like, who are they trying to impress? Their own people? Ooh, we put an arrest warrant out for Zelensky. Now the war is really going well. It's just so weird. And thank you, by the way, for the gift. Yeah, domestic. I guess it is for it's got to be for domestic audience, Joshua. I think that's what you're saying. Technically, isn't TikTok a Cayman company based in Singapore? I don't know about that. Their CEO is Singaporean, but they're owned by the thing is they're owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company. That's the problem. And we know this, right? It's not like everyone's wrong that the Chinese really don't control TikTok and own TikTok. Of course they do, But the CEO's from Singapore. That was the famous. Exactly. I'm Singaporean, sir. That was the famous interview of that. Who was the Republican? Was it Tom Cotton? Who was it? The Republican congressman that was doing it, or senator, who kept attacking the TikTok CEO and accusing him of being Chinese. And he's like, I'm Singaporean. Yes, but have you been in the Chinese military? No. I've been in the Singaporean military. Thank you, Jeremy. It was Tom Cotton. Okay. No, it was Tom Cotton. That's what I thought. A couple of you were saying it. That's what I was thinking. That was just embarrassing. Embarrassingly bad. And he just kept pushing him. The guy keeps going, no, Singapore. But didn't you live in China? Singapore. It's like, I mean, it was funny in a way, but it was also really screwed up, you know? Well, also the issue was that the guy, I mean, Mr. Hu, the problem is his staff gave him bad information. His staff clearly told him, "Oh, it's a Chinese company, it's Chinese or something," and and I shouldn't say they gave him bad information, but I think he kind of ran with it, the fact that they were Chinese, and thought, "Oh, okay, this guy must be Chinese." But also, it was him being a little racist because he was just assuming the guy's Asian, he must be Chinese, right? And then still not getting it. Once the guy said it, normal people would go, "Okay, I may have screwed up here," right? But he just kept pushing and pushing. It was crazy. You know. Oh, Josh Hawley. It could have been Josh Hawley. I think it was Josh Hawley and not Cotton. Somebody Google it. I think you're right. I think it might have been Josh Hawley. That's interesting. I know the cheesecake is a good idea, Sobo. I don't think I've ever gotten a cheesecake in Philadelphia. I have to see if I can do that. I'm game. Lunch on Saturday. That would work for me. Only Russia has tactical nukes? That's not true. We've got tactical nukes. I'm pretty sure. Aren't the nukes that we have in Europe tactical nukes? The ones that we've got in like Turkey, Netherlands, Italy, etc. I always forget the etc. Aren't they tactical? I'm pretty sure they're tactical. Thank you, Super Hornet, for the gift. Where in Philly? I don't know. We're staying at a hotel. Because they're having a sort of a series. It was Tom Cotton? Okay. It was Tom Cotton. Okay. Thanks, guys. They're having a series of like a dinner Saturday night, Friday night, dinner Saturday night, and then brunch on Sunday. So different places for each of them. And then I'm staying at some hotel. I don't know. It was Tom Cotton. Okay, that's what it was. Oh, it was embarrassing. It was definitely embarrassing. But okay, we'll have to see. Yeah, I'll have to... Because I'm game on Saturday going for cheesesteak. I don't know if my friend Matt who's going into that, but I like cheesesteak. So, it was Cotton. Okay, that's funny. That's funny. Motel 6, yeah. Oh, boy. What else, guys? We're not going to go too long tonight, like I said, because I'm definitely feeling a bit... This may or may not be my leftover Bali problem. It may have also caught something from the family members here for Greek Easter on Sunday, I'm afraid. I'm kind of suspicious that that's what's going on now. Because I definitely was feeling a little bit of a sore throat trying to start this morning. And I'm not feeling bad, but I'm just feeling a little bit like the last thing I need, especially with this weekend coming up, because I don't want to go to Philly if I'm sick, but let's see. Hardy, the experts say using tactical nuclear weapons would be stupid in Ukraine. Yeah. I mean, the experts say the defense guys will say there's like no strategic benefit to Russia using nukes in Ukraine. So, that is correct. Oil of oregano? Only problem is I can't get that now, but good idea. Thank you, Swan person, for the orange. Used to a swan, but an orange works too. From you. What would happen if the U.S. placed nukes in Ukraine? Thank you, user 336. I mean, the Russians would freak out. Thank you, Tiger Pug. They definitely freak out. Ginger tea with honey and lemon. I don't think we've got ginger tea here. I don't think we do. Or ginger. I guess I could buy ginger and do it. I make my own ginger tea at home, but again, it's too late now. I'll make it I'm back to DC tomorrow. Maybe I'll buy some ginger and do it. I didn't see secret video inside Putin's house. No, there's a new video out? I didn't see that. Water and tea. Beep, 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 beep. When will Ukraine start to blow up Black Sea oil terminals? Is there, have they not? I mean, they were going after some of the oil terminals before. They haven't been going after a lot of them. I mean, they got the ones from Crimea. Do the Russians have many oil terminals they're you know, on the sea outside of Crimea, because I know that they stole the Ukrainian ones there. Hot toddy, you guys are funny. Thanks, Swan. I know it says live Washington D.C. I never changed it. I can change it. It requires me going into Photoshop and changing it, and I just forgot, and I kind of left it. So you are correct. I've got a little screen thing on YouTube that sort of shows my show and where I'm from and everything, and it says Washington D.C. on it, which is where I'm from nowadays. But still, thank you, Vicky. Our F-16s in Ukraine just out of sight. Hard to say. Thank you, Ava, as well for the gifts. Hard to say. I mean, if they're able to hide them sufficiently, maybe. Thank you, Jonathan. There is a greater risk, though. Like, why have the F-16s just sitting there for months until they can use them? You know, why not maybe keep them in a NATO country until is probably safer. So I would probably lean towards they're probably not hiding them right now because it's still riskier, you know? Thank you, Jonathan, for the hearts. You know, and they're still training the pilots anyway. Yeah. We don't kind of know where that stands now. Oh boy. The ground crew training happening in the U.S. is still ongoing. Well, we know the training is going to keep on going. We know that. In other words, what I mean is they're going to train them in bunches. Like initially, the training was like 6 or 8, like 8 of them, like the pilots. And because like that was the number of slots they had, so like we knew they were going to train them and then 6 or 8 more pilots and then 6 or 8 more. So the training's going to be ongoing anyway. The question is how many. I know I just didn't sleep well last night and the last couple of nights, and like I said, I'm on the risk of coming down with something. No, there's mechanics too. It's both. The mechanics. No, the mechanics were like 80. They had like 8 pilots and like another 70 mechanics or something they were training in that first batch. Remember? So the fact that it's ongoing doesn't mean they haven't finished with some of the training already. But we don't know. They're not telling us. You know? Anyway. Oh, sorry guys. I am tired. Oh gosh. Olive oil, yeah. Spray some olive oil. Drink some olive oil. Anyway. What else we got here, guys? Favorite city I've lived in? Paris. I haven't lived in that many cities. I've lived in some cool ones, but I haven't lived in that many. I've only lived in Chicago, D.C., New York. New York was good. Paris and Buenos Aires a little bit. I lived there a few months. Buenos Aires was pretty nice. Paris was really cool. But I haven't lived anywhere else, I don't think. No. I mean, I lived in Greece for 4 months. 4 months in Greece, fair enough. But I would say Paris, yeah. Thank you, Squirrely. Favorite wool colors? I don't know what that means. I don't quite know what that means. My favorite color tends to be red because it looks good on me. But I like blue, too. Like blues. Like sunset colors and various blue, like Squirrely just did on the colors, like purple and blue and stuff, you know. Okay, guys, yeah, I think I'm gonna sign off. I'm not gonna do a. Oh, is there a troll here? Ruh-roh. Well, mods, if there's a troll you want to get rid of, feel free. Otherwise, I think I'm gonna sign off. Yeah, because like I said, I'm feeling kind of ugh, which is really pissing me off. How did you get so knowledgeable? Age. I mean, again, I've studied this stuff. I've worked in it for years. I've got a big background. A long time background in foreign policy and government policy because I've worked in Washington for like almost 40 years. Thank you, Pedro. So it's kind of a mix of everything, you know. But yeah, okay, guys. Yeah, I'm gonna get going just to kind of. Thank you. Who was that? Last minute gifts from Luis and Pedro. Thank you, guys. But yeah, let me get going, and then remember tomorrow I'm not doing the show because I don't even get into DC until like 5. The plane lands at like 5:30 or something, and the show normally is at 6, so that's not happening. But I will be back Thursday, actually, and then that's it for the week because Friday I'm going to Philly, and then Saturday is Eurovision, but I'm going to be in Philly still. So yeah, all right, guys. So I will see you again Thursday. We'll do that. All right. And if I can, I'll try to pop in mornings or evenings or something if I can, just to kind of... Quick question. Okay, Doughboy, throw a quick question. Type fast. These, they simulcast on YouTube. So basically, I've got my iPad for TikTok that I do the show, and at the same time on my laptop right next to me, I'm broadcasting on YouTube. So YouTube saves it. TikTok doesn't save them. TikTok, it's really weird. TikTok saves it for me behind the scenes so I can download it, and it's just pain in the ass, really. But YouTube, they're right there. So feel free to, it's John Aravosis DC on YouTube. So you can just Google me there. Or, again, go to my profile on TikTok, click the Linktree link, and one of those links will be YouTube. And that'll take you to my YouTube page. So yeah, you can see everything there. Am I allergic to wool? I don't think so. Who told you I was allergic to wool? I'm not allergic to wool.
Okay.
No. All right. I'm going to sign off, guys. All right.